It all starts in the life of Tomozaki, our protagonist. He's the best fighting game player in Japan, in other words, he's the badass. But in life games he's terrible because he doesn't know how to relate to people, he seems sloppy, he gets bad grades, he's terrible at sports, he's hunchback, he's basically in the shit. On the other hand, there's Nakamura, and what's the problem? The opposite of our protagonist, intelligent, good at sports and so on. He hears that our protagonist is the best at games, so he challenges him to a fight. Obviously our protagonist wins, but the idiot Nakamura starts complaining that he chose the wrong character, that his characters are better than mine and blah blah blah. And our protagonist says, "Ah yes, that's fine, so let's play with the characters reversed," and obviously our protagonist wins. Well, maybe this game is shit. Our protagonist gets angry because he says that a player's greatest shame is to blame the game when he loses. Our characters were equally strong, it's just that I worked hard practicing combos, strategies, etc. Something you didn't do. We are then introduced to Hanami, who has gone to talk to our protagonist to ask which of the two won. She's the best in the school at everything, the smartest, the best athlete, the prettiest, the most everything. The next day, Tomozaki was playing as usual, but it was his turn against the second best player in Japan called No Name, who is the only player our protagonist respects because he notices that he's trying hard to improve. After beating him, he tells him if they can meet in person. The next day they meet and it turns out to be Hanami. Our protagonist is shocked for the better, but Hanami is shocked for the worse because that exceptional attack family's #1 player, the only person she respects, is a loser in real life. Hanami says, "Tidy up a bit, look at those dirty sneakers, torn pants, crumpled shirt, you're disheveled, that's a disaster." Our protagonist says, "It turns out that you, a character with high starting stats, will never understand what I feel. An inferior character, clumsy and without social skills. Life is unbalanced, it has no rules, it's a shitty game." Hanami replies, "What? You lost and you're blaming the game? Have you no shame? Things are achieved with effort, thought, strategy, you don't deserve to be called a gamer. Doesn't that remind you of anything?" Yes, it's exactly the same excuse Nakamura used when he lost, and it's exactly the same lecture our protagonist gave him, and he says, "Yes, I understand what you're saying, but in real life you can't change characters." Hanami takes him home, takes off her makeup, puts on a different outfit and says, "See how I've changed." By this she means that she wasn't born with high stats as our protagonist says, but that she has learned how to put on makeup, dress, have good posture, express herself well, socialize, etc. In fact, life is the best game of all. So as she respects him and is angry that the only person she is a fan of is a failure, she goes to help him. Our prota realizes that everything Hanami says makes sense. Well, if you say that life is the best game in the world, the gamer in me wants to play, and that's how our story begins. So they meet in a coffee shop and Hanami tells them that from now on he's going to wear a mask all the time for a week. While wearing it, he has to smile from ear to ear all the time. This is how his facial muscles get used to smiling. She also tells him that they will meet every day 30 minutes before and after school in the sewing room. Then in the sewing room they talk about their goals. As there were many, she divided them into medium and small goals. The small goal is for a family member or friend to compliment you. In other words, they recognize that your appearance or personality has improved. The medium goal is to get a girlfriend before the end of the year. Today's goal is for him to have 3 girls. He asks a girl called Izum for a handkerchief. He sits down next to her. She doesn't have one, so he asks his friend Kikuchi. He thanks them both and everything is fine. Later, in economics class, he talks to Minami and Hanabi. They laugh at some silly thing our protagonist said and Nakamura shows up to disturb him because he resented our protagonist hitting him. What's so funny? They tell him what he said that made you laugh. That joke sucks. Hanami arrives and puts Nakamura in his place, saying, "What's wrong with you? Do you resent him because he said something funny?" Anyway, afterwards they go to the sewing room to see what our prota has learned. He's done very well at holding a conversation. He just has to get better at answering people who make fun of him. The next day they're going to school with a group of friends and our prota's goal is to naturally join in the conversation. He doesn't succeed very well, but Hanami is always there to help him. In the end, it turns out that Minami and our prota were leaving for the same place, so they go together and are left alone. They have a little chat on the way. The next day, our prota and Hanami go to the sewing room to point out the mistakes in carrying on a conversation and to give tips. First, find a nice subject to talk about and then expand on it. Hanami gives him a notebook with random topics for him to talk about so that he can practice. She also records a conversation for our mentee to listen to and learn how to speak in a circle of friends. Later, Hanami and our prota go to a shopping mall to change our protagonist's look. look. She makes him buy some nice clothes and they go out to eat until it's time for our protagonist's hairdresser. The restaurant they meet Kikuchi, the one who lent him the scarf. Turns out that she works there, and Hanami tells our protagonist that she chose Kikuchi to be her girlfriend, as she is interested in our protagonist. You're wondering how I know? Well, it's complicated, but let's just say that Hanami has analyzed it, and based on her reactions, she is interested in our protagonist. But in the meantime, Hanami and our protagonist are spending a lot of time together. In fact, everything they've done this day could be considered a date. I'm saying this because you can already tell that the two of them are getting on very well, and I don't want to say anything, but we all know what's going to happen in the end, don't we? Well, after he's had his haircut, his sister compliments him, so he's accomplished his goal. Good boy, let's go! Now his next small goal is to be alone somewhere other than school with a girl other than Hanami. He also has to talk to Izumi at least twice a day, because Hanami says he doesn't have to concentrate on one, he has to deal with the affection of several girls. This activates jealousy and competition, and also raises his status as a man. How does this girl know so much? I don't know, but I like it a lot. I'm not going to complain, it seems appropriate, so he does it. The week goes by and he talks to her. Although it fails, the conversations come to nothing. But Hanami tells him that the good thing about life's games is that, even if something goes wrong, it's still worth it as an experience that helps him reveal his abilities. Later, in the library, our prota meets Akikuchi. They talk for a while and she tells him she's writing a novel and asks if he can give her his opinion, so next time he'll bring the novel for our prota to read. On leaving school, he finds Izumi a bit sad, asks her what's wrong, and she tells him that the boy she likes doesn't hang out with her much because he's practicing attack families. Since our protagonist is a pro, she asks him to teach her how to hit him, so they go home and our prota gets into his element because he's very good at attack families. So he goes on to teach her, and also that they later talk about life. So the level of affection with Izumi increased. Then Nakamura challenges him to a duel again because he's been training all this time. What's more, several girls show up to watch. They play about 15 times, and all 15 times our protagonist wins. The girls who came to watch started making fun of Nakamura for playing attack families and losing. Our protagonist gets angry because they say attack families was a joke, a piece of shit, and because they don't appreciate Nakamura's efforts, so he puts them in their place. He seals it, earning the respect of Nakamura and his friends, as well as Izumi and Hanami. In short, he's made a tremendous combination of skills socially speaking because he's earned respect points from everyone with just that one joke. They then go to a shopping mall with Izumi, Hanami, Mizusawa, who is a friend of Nakamura's, and our protagonist to buy Nakamura a birthday present and make up. His aim is to take over leadership of the group, but he fails because he always suggests things first. Mizusawa finishes buying the presents, eats, and Hanami explains to our protagonist that the suggestion doesn't have to be the best of all, it simply has to be convincing, meaning that it then gets more attention than quality. Afterwards, Minami and Hanami compete to be president of the student council. Hanami tells our protagonist to volunteer as Minami's manager to get closer to her, so she makes him spend a lot of time together planning a strategy to beat Hanami, but they still lose. But he's scored points with Minami, so it's all good. Then he befriends Mizusawa and teaches him how to comb his hair with gel. Mizusawa, Minami, Hanami, and our protagonist meet at his house to organize a trip. They all come together to unite Nakamura and Izumi. The next day, he invites Kikuchi to the movies. They go to a restaurant, talk a bit, and everything seems to be going well because Kikuchi tells him she wants to go out with him again, so they agree to watch the fireworks together. A few days later, they go on a mini vacation to meet up with Nakamura and Izumi. Minami gives him the task of mocking or confronting Nakamura, the leader of the tribe, 3 times, and he does it. Next comes the test of courage. Nakamura and Izumi make a group. Minami, Mizusawa, and Takei another. Takei is a friend of Nakamura and Mizusawa. And finally, Hanami and our prota. Hanami acts like a scared girl to test our prota, throws herself at him and hugs him just like being scared by an insect. Hanami hugs him and is about to kiss him, but our prota pulls away. Hanami, of course, says that he won the test because it was all a setup, of course. Hanami and our prota stop to talk about his progress, but Mizusawa arrives and our protagonist hides so he doesn't see him there. Mizusawa declares himself to Hanami. Hanami rejects him and he says that it was all a joke. He says that everything he does is an act. He does it because it's the right thing to do, but he's not the same. And he tells her that she does the same, that she doesn't take off her mask. The only person she is herself is our protagonist. Mizusawa tells her that this is why he admires our protagonist's sincerity, and speaking of which, he comes out of hiding and explains to him what happened, that he hid it just in case I don't know what, and it's fine. I mean, it's fine because that's how our story ends. And if you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe as it helps me a lot, and I'll wait for you in the next video. Until next time.